Hi there, welcome to Insights 2024 November. I'm Luke, a systems software engineer in the Jade plant, and I'll be going over some lesser known or recently added features in the IDE. While I think hidden gems and undocumented tricks may be selling it a bit too much, I do hope this will be of some use to some of you. I've recently had a few questions and remarks about various features, either presumed missing or otherwise not known about, so I thought I'd compile them together, and the result is this presentation. There's a few I missed that I would like to get back to, so there's more where this came from if requested. We'll start off with some recent editor improvements. While rectangular selection has been supported for a while now, there were a few behavioral quirks about it that made it less than ideal. It's been improved in Jade 2022. In the next slide, I'll go over the new features, which are virtual space handling, rectangular clipboard formats, and multiple carets. Now, when we create a rectangular region or selection, so hold the Alt key down, click and drag, virtual space is accounted for, so you get a rectangular paste regardless of the content. And when you copy to the clipboard, it's saved as either a rectangular clip item or a string clip item. So now we sort of play nicely with the other editors that support this, such as Notepad++. And I find myself using this most when dealing with unit tests or any repetitive code blocks or comments, and it's useful for alignment purposes too. We can now control and click to create additional carets. And there is a concept of a primary caret, which is the latest one you've created. You may notice it's drawn darker than the others. And this is the one that's considered when performing operations such as code folding or context menu operations. And multiple caret typing also supports undo and redo. While we're talking about the editor, let's go over the editor usages menu. Fairly sure that most people are aware that right-clicking on a method or a property in our browsers will allow you to go and view its references. A new feature added in Jade 2020-01 that may have got under the radar is the ability to view references of objects directly from source. My experience with older Jade systems that lacked this feature has been limited. However, navigating schemas with thousands of classes, some containing hundreds of properties, was a real headache, and this feature was sorely missed. If we right-click on an identifier in the editor, down the very bottom there, you'll see usages. Click on that and we'll show you a sub-context menu. The context menu will differ depending on what the type of the identifier is. If it's a property, you can view its references, local, read, update. If it's a type class or global constant, you can view just its references. And if it's a method, you can view its references, implementers, and implementer references. Under the hood, I believe it uses autocomplete, so autocomplete must be set to true for this to function. And this is just a reminder that this feature exists. I use it daily. I find it really useful since it removes the time spent navigating to these objects. Loading user preferences. I think there's always been a way to load user preferences from a file. At least it's possible as far back as Jade 6.3. But a feature I was previously unaware of that was introduced in Jade 2020-01 is that you can now load them via batch script. Jade Schema provides a non-GUI application that'll load the user preferences file for the designated user. There are two parameters, the user's name and the path to the file. Now you can even do this in a multi-user environment while that user is logged on, but the preferences will only take effect for newly created windows. So this is just a quick way to load up your preferences if you find yourself juggling Jade versions or systems. So here's my batch script specifying the load user profile in file app and two start app parameters being username and profile any file name. And you can also programmatically load the user preferences by directly starting the application with those parameters. And now I've just run that. And it'll take effect for any newly created windows. Or if we go to the user preferences dialog, it'll apply the new preferences to all open windows. Kind of as an aside to that, if this is placed in a script, you can create a new custom toolbar button to execute this, which is a quick way to set your preferences. Just a quick recap of this feature. It's there since Jade 2022. You can create buttons in the IDE toolbar that will initiate an application or execute a script or test. And I'd like to at some point support the use of specifying an icon for each and perhaps hotkey. We'll see. I'll quickly go over the creation of a new custom toolbar button. So click the plus icon there and just select the schema and application and whether you want to start an application script or test case. Then we'll select the actual one and give it a name. Now, I've recently heard that these custom toolbar buttons aren't actually saved to the user's profile, which I intend to remedy. And here's a quick block I just threw together to demonstrate it working. Now, these custom buttons are just stored as strings on the user's profile, and here I'm just saving them in a new toolbar buttons section of the user preferences any file. So this would be great to get out sometime soon. And just while we're in this area, for those of you on smaller laptops where vertical real estate is limited, you can hide several of the toolbars via context menu. Extracting RPS mappings in a human readable format. Now, we already support extracting to a DDB and DDX, but this slide idea came out of a Jade meeting where a recent Jade had requested there be a way to extract to a human readable format. We kind of do already provide a roundabout way of doing this. It's not ideal, but it's there, and I thought I'd share. So, as you already know, users can extract their RPS mappings to a DDB or DDX format. DDB is horrid to read, and while DDX is far better structured, it's still not what I'd call human readable format exactly. Now, if we navigate to the Insights schema and its RPS mappings, right-click and select Print, not Extract like you'd expect. We provide the option to perform a print preview, so you can get a quick look at your mappings in a much better format. Or print, aka save, to a RTF file, rich text format file. And the extracted file there, you can convert it to a text file. There may be easier methods to remove the rich text formatting, but this is far easier to pass. Let's go over macro shortcuts, which have always sort of been an unknown area to me, and I've never really delved into the macro space before. I did have a question about this recently, so not knowing much about this area myself, I thought it's worth quickly going over in case others aren't aware also. Now, even after reading the macro documentation, I somehow came away thinking that you'd only play one saved macro at a time. This is incorrect. Instead, the play saved macro shortcut key expects a following key that matches the starting letter of one of your saved macros. Now, I think they're case sensitive, so that's a total of 26 times 2 plus 0 to 9 plus underscore 63 possible unique macros. I'll quickly go over creating some macros, then showcase a feature that I'm sure has been requested multiple times before. It's possible entirely with macros. There are two macro shortcut keys that are not set by default, and you can find them in the editor category. Now, the temp macro will play immediately when you press the shortcut key. The saved one will not. It must be followed by the starting character of one of your saved macros. So let's just create a macro that outputs current date. And we'll save it as macro 1. So if we create another macro that starts with M as well, we won't be able to play it via this shortcut key. So we'll just play the first one in the list that appears to be ordered alphanumerically. So we press our play macro shortcut key followed by M. The first one gets printed out. Now, here's an example of a feature that I wish I knew a while ago. Examples even in the documentation, so I don't know how I missed it. This one will simply select each, the whole line, and adds 2 forward slashes to it, so it comments each of the lines. This one undoes the operation. So it's similar to the chords feature in Visual Studio, and there's a whole macro language out there that you can play around with. It's quite powerful. This one's a small feature that I was unaware of until I discovered that a regression had removed it and it had to be restored. It's just a small helper feature that's probably unknown. If you have an entire method's content copied to the clipboard and you then paste that content in the text box of a method definition dialog, we'll only paste that method's name, not the entire content or the entire signature. So what you're left with is a valid method name. So copy the entire source of the method you're interested in. Go to another system, create a method. Now, when we paste, only the method's name will be entered. So you've got a valid method name. And then override the contents with what's in your paste. And it's just a quick way to copy source from one system to another. Now, from within the same system, there's already a drag and drop feature, which has been around forever. And control, drag and drop will copy, whereas shift, drag and drop will move instead. And this does not work across systems, it's just from within the same system. Let's go over the method refactoring options. I do get some use out of the method refactoring options. Most of them are pretty straightforward. They attempt to take the selected text and perform an operation on them if that text is deemed an appropriate type. The add class menu item doesn't require anything to be selected. There is just a shortcut to the class definition dialog. The declare local variable menu item will only succeed if the selected text is an appropriate local variable name. So it has to start with a lowercase character or underscore and only valid characters. And if you don't designate a type, you'll have to select one. If it is assigned something, it'll be created as that type. We'll skip the extract method menu item since it's a tad more involved. And the generate method stub menu item is a bit particular about what constitutes appropriately selected text. It needs to be a valid non-existent method name, followed by parentheses, parameters, if any, and a semicolon. But you are not to select all these. This only place the caret within the actual method, soon to be method name itself, and will generate an appropriately empty method. So you have to specify the schema. And it'll take into account all parameters and such and return values. And it's added to the currently selected class. And the rest are relatively self-explanatory, so we'll skip those two. So this code block here just iterates over each property in a Jade dynamic object and adds its name and value to a huge string array. If we extract method here, you may notice there are some parameters here that are not strictly necessary. The method give property info by index, a few of them are actually output, and yet they're defined as constant parameters. So let's instead declare those as local variables. Including I. And let's change its name, which will update the actual generated method call itself. And we need to remove those additional parameters as well. The navigation bar was introduced in Jade 2018 and adds 3 combo boxes to each hierarchy browser. It provides a quick way to select a schema class or method. This demo will quickly go over its behavior, and at the end we'll also go over an older feature that kind of overlaps with it, and that is the Control+6 and the Control+7 property and method search feature. The navigation bar is disabled by default, so let's open the User Preferences dialog, go to the browser sheet, and you can enable it from there. This gives us 3 combo boxes at the top. The leftmost one displays all schemas, and you can type there to search. You can also use camel case filtering to select a schema. The middle combo box will display all classes in the schema, and the rightmost one will display all methods, if we have any. And for forms, it'll also display all event methods. So this is probably the quickest way to get to and view all event methods for a form. Now, selecting a different schema used to automatically select the object class, which was an annoyance. And that was regardless of where you were in the class hierarchy. Since 2020-01, we try to maintain your position. So if, like here, we're navigating to a super schema, we'll select the next class up in the hierarchy that's available, which was C3. In the case of choosing a sub-schema, we'll retain the currently selected class. Navigating schemas without opening a new hierarchy browser is the main reason I keep my navigation bar permanently displayed. It doesn't take up much vertical space, and I use it frequently enough to warrant it staying there. The other 2 combo boxes are mostly either navigate via F4 in the case of classes, or Control+7 in the case of methods. I should probably advertise this feature too, which precedes the navigation bar, but somewhat overlaps with it. Control+6 in the hierarchy browser will allow you to search for the properties displayed in the list box below. And Control+7 will do the same for methods. Note that it'll only be populated with the list box contents. So if you have the property attributes sheet displayed, no controls will be visible, for example. And lastly, code folding. So I've had a couple of questions about code folding, so I just thought I'd go over the shortcuts and what the differences were between the normal and compact options are. The toggle fold simply toggles the nearest fold point. This is what the documentation says, but what it actually does is toggle the innermost fold point on the line where the main caret is positioned, or the fold point on the line. Toggle fold all base just toggles the expansion and collapse of all fold points. And toggle fold tree does the same as toggle fold, except all children will be affected as well. The folding style is set to normal by default, and for normal folding, the fold point is placed on the end of a header statement. And in this case of an if statement, it's the then clause. It extends to but does not include the matching terminating word. Here's an example of a multi-line if statement. Starts at then, ends just before the end if. And for a while loop, that's to need while. For both multiple single-line comments or multi-line comments, the fold point begins on the first line and then extends to but does not include the last line. And if we switch over to compact folding, go to Edit Options, you'll notice that the fold point is placed on the line containing the first word of the statement, in this case if, and extends to the matching terminating word. And that holds true for multi-line if statements, of course. I'd call this a quirk because I'm not sure I like this behavior, but it also extends across any blank lines thereafter as well. By default, the shortcut key is Control plus numpad multiply for toggling a single fold point, which I don't really use because I use my mouse for navigating mostly, but the toggle all shortcut key, which defaults to Control Shift plus numpad multiply, I find quite useful, just for quickly navigating to either a known code block or to get an overview of the method. Okay, thanks for listening. I hope the audio worked out well enough. And as I stated at the start, I'd hoped to get a few more in here, but they can wait for another time. Cheers.